Welcome, friends. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We have a wonderful session for you tonight. And this session is titled Exposing Your Inner Imposter. We have been able to adapt this from good learnings from a transcript and a lecture titled The Psychological Self. But this is exposing your inner imposter. And for us to be able to delve into this topic, we have to set a baseline so that we can comprehend what are we. And we know that there is a Hermetic principle that states, as above, so below. And that being the case, we know that above, this concept of divinity that we all profoundly understand is a divine trinity. It is a triunity, or a combination of three in one. And it so happens that based on the principle of correspondence, the same thing happens to us. We, in our current condition, we are an ego, an essence, and the personality. The essence is that aspect that exists within us, that truly divine aspect of each and every one of us that we have been given so that we can, through sincere efforts, fabricate a solar, radiant soul. This essence is a fraction of the human soul, of our spirit, of our divine innermost. And this is the one part of the being, of our innermost, that we have incarnated today. And then there's the personality. And the personality is just an energetic vehicle. It is the energetic vehicle that we use so that we can interchange with the environment, so that we can exchange with each other, so that we can relate. And being an energetic vehicle, it is malleable, and we're able to adapt it and conform it to many difficult and many different circumstances. But the personality, because we create it between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, from the moment of conception to the time that we're 7, well, if we create it at the beginning of this life, at the end of this life, eventually this personality will go away. So there is no future for the personality. Eventually, once the physical body ceases to exist, the personality as an energetic vehicle will slowly start disintegrating until it becomes nothing, cosmic dust. And that then leaves the ego. And so much has been said about the ego. And hopefully tonight we'll be able to give you more than enough information so that you can have a good comprehension on what this thing called the ego is. And we're going to start by saying the ego is many things. We cannot just put a single definition, because a simple definition will always fall short. The ego is many things. And the ego is one as an individual entity when we see it as the Kunda buffer organ. The Kunda buffer organ is the very same tail of Satan. It is a symbol of creative powers that, instead of being directed inward and upwards, that lead to expansion, that create and allow the manifestation of conditions that are edifying and dignifying to the essence, well, it's our forces that are projected in a way that is inverted, that lead to a path of involution. And thus we see the tail of Satan as that line of force that is an inverted arrow pointing down towards the earth. And so the ego is one as the Kunda buffer organ. The more we continue nourishing our inferior passions and our desires, well, the stronger this organ is going to get. So this is the ego as one. Notice that for us to better grasp this, know that the Kunda buffer organ is a negative fire. It is the opposite of the fire of Kundalini, rather than it being a fire that edifies, that creates, that purifies, that transforms. Well, it leads to a transformation that is of a tenebrous nature. This is the Kunda buffer organ. Again, it projects itself downwards from the spine, and it is symbolized by the tail of Satan. But if the ego is one, the ego is also three. And as three, it is the very same three traitors of the Christ. The first one that we see is the demon of desire. The ego, part of it is that. And as the demon of desire, this creature was symbolized in this great cosmic drama as Judas. So you and I, we all have an internal Judas. We all have a demon of desire. An aspect of us that is willing at any given moment to sell everything that is divine within us, just in exchange for pleasures and other worldly things. Beyond that, the ego is also the demon of the mind. This demon of the mind, we see it symbolized by Pontius Pilate. And as you would all remember very well, Pilate is that Roman emperor that brings about the great master Jeshua and exposes him to the crowd. And he says, "What do you want to do with this man?" He says, "I have not seen any wrongdoing. I don't have anything to accuse him of. What do you want to do with him?" And the crowd says, "Crucifixia, crucifixia." They say, "Crucify him." They say, "Give us Barabbas. Give us the thief. Give us the criminal. Crucify the divine." This is the demon of the mind inside each and every one of us. The one that does not want to assume any responsibility. The one that rather than taking courageous steps will simply step back and blame it on others. To the degree that when Pontius Pilate is exercising that character in this cosmic drama, he even washes his hands as if he were washing away his responsibility and, in a way, his guilt. No, this is what the demon of the mind does. So the ego is three, as the demon of desire, the demon of the mind, and also as the demon of ill will. This demon of ill will is symbolized by Caiaphas. And Caiaphas, in the cosmic drama, being that great priest, one that was revered and respected, that was believed to be very knowledgeable of the laws and respect, etc., etc. This is the one architect behind the crucifixion of the Christ. This is the one that was responsible of moving all those chess pieces to make sure that things at the end went the way that he wanted. This is the demon of ill will in each and every one of us. It is bad intentions. It is speaking behind the backs of others, sometimes our friends, sometimes even the people that we love. But that is what the demon of ill will does. So the ego is one as the Kunda buffer organ. It is three as the three traitors of the Christ. And it is also seven. And it is seven as the seven deadly sins. And you know what these are. These are anger and avarice. These are pride, lust, sloth, envy, gluttony. So with this, is there something else that is the ego? Well, let us tell you this. The ego is not only a multiplicity inside of us, within our own psyche, the ego is a legion. Because every different mask that our pride will wear, that's the ego. Every different mask that our gluttony and our ambitions and our lusts will wear, that is the ego. So as many of those different inferior aspects of us you can see with the eye of your mind, all of that together makes up the ego. And the key thing here is that our true essence, that thing that is truly divine within each and every one of us, is trapped within the legion of the ego. Inside every different aspect of pride that may exist within us, whether it is self-consideration or self-love, or those aspects of pride that sometimes throw us into different degrees of depression, or the pride that gets hurt because somebody knows more or argues, all of those little silly different masks that we wear. Inside each one of those, there is a fraction of our essence. And so, with a fragmented consciousness that is dispersed within all of these different many things that are the ego, well, our consciousness is weakened. And our intent is to bring back that consciousness. As they used to say in ancient times, as they speak in terms of alchemy, we must be willing to steal that fire from the darkness. And to do that, it is necessary that we comprehend the ego. When we can comprehend it, we can eliminate it. And when we eliminate it, every time that we comprehend one of the many different phases of our anger, defect comprehended, defect eliminated, that consciousness, that essence that is trapped within the ego, it comes back to coalesce within itself. Imagine as if that ego broke, and as it's broken, that particle of light of the consciousness comes back to coalesce within your heart. The more of those defects we can eliminate, the more consciousness we're able to retrieve, and the more we retrieve, the stronger becomes our individual and particular magnetic center. We will tell you this. If you're listening to this tonight, today, it is because that magnetic center is very active within you. And so, let's bring more of this consciousness in, because the more of this light that we bring in, the more illuminated we become. The more illuminated, the more awakened we become. And so, we comprehend it, we work to eliminate it, and we seek to free every fraction of consciousness that is trapped within the ego itself. So our goal here, it's let's show you as many faces of this ego we can show you tonight, so that when you see them, you recognize them. And as you recognize them, we're going to give you some good indicators so that you can go in and comprehend that defect and work with powers that are indeed superior to the mind towards their elimination. And let's go ahead and start with the defect of pride, because pride is one of those pervasive defects that is exceedingly nourished in all of us. And this pride thing, it has a very interesting story behind it. And for that, we're going to make a reference to the story of Narcissus. This comes from the Greek mythology. Narcissus was a man that was famed for his beauty. I mean, this was such a handsome, corpulent man that his looks captivated everyone. But even though that happened, Narcissus' heart remained cold. And his coldness reached for the nymph Echo. Echo was a nymph that was cursed to only repeat the last words that were spoken to her. And so, from the moment that Echo was cursed and she could only speak the last few words that she heard from someone, well, at that moment, the echo of the mountains was born. And it was only from that moment forward, and yet not before. And one day, Echo came across Narcissus, and she fell in love with him. And when she tried to express her love, all she could do was repeat his words. Because of this, Narcissus was not able to correspond, and she felt rejected, and she faded away, and of course, she left her voice to haunt the mountains. But in this condition, Narcissus, one very hot day, he came upon a still pool of water. And as he leans over, he sees the beauty of his reflection. He notices a beauty that was so intense that he became entranced. He was thinking that it was someone else, that it was some other person in there of unparalleled beauty. And he fell so in love with that reflection. He tried to captivate the creature, but when he reached into the waters, he realized that that was just a reflection of himself. Seeing that beauty, not being able to possess it, he felt heartbroken. And Narcissus took his own life. In a way, this is what pride does to us. We end up creating so many self-imposed definitions of what we are, of what we think we are, of what we want others to think that we are. And the moment someone speaks against what we want others to believe that we are, we rebel in ways that are very aggressive, that are very violent. And sometimes we can mask it and we can make pretend, but internally we know. And just like Narcissus died by his own hand, our own pride hurts us consistently, ever so slowly. And it affects us tremendously. There are so many different dangerous aspects of pride that one of them is called mythomania. What I'm showing you here on the screen is the image of a man who calls himself INNER Cristo. INNER Cristo, he claims to be the reincarnation of Jesus. But all of you, if you have ever heard the story of Jesus, well, the story states that not only he suffered a horrible death through crucifixion, but he was brought into a sepulcher, and at the third day he was resurrected. And by definition of resurrection, he is alive and with his body. So it is impossible for someone to be the reincarnation of someone who is alive. You see? This is what mythomania does. So here we have a man who is 66 years old at the time of whenever this picture was taken, and who claims to be the reincarnation of Jesus, and speaks so well about so many different things, even though he's a fraud and an imposter, that he has millions of followers. The blind leading the blind. Why do we use this as an example of mythomania? Because mythomania is that aspect of pride that moves you to see yourself as God. Where you start creating elaborate stories about your greatness. There is compulsive lying for no apparent reason at all. It is a very aggressive vampire looking for admiration, adoration. Mythomania seeks to be set beyond a pedestal. After all, there is a self-consideration of being as great as a god, not even as a titan, a mythological titan, but beyond that, as a god. So this is mythomania. And we tell you this, there are many students of Gnosis who eventually become so influenced by their own fantasies and fanaticisms that they develop a very strong defect of mythomania. So notice, compulsive lying, lying that happens for no reason, elaborate stories always seeking to draw attention, adoration from others. This is mythomania. But what about that pride aspect that is vanity? Vanity is not exclusive of women. I mean, there are men who are have a lot more vanity than many women. So what is this thing, vanity? Vanity is total focus on yourself. But it's only total focus on yourself as what you think you are intellectually, what you think you are emotionally, what you think you are physically, how you think you look, how you think where do you stand in that scale of beauty? And because this is all subjective, that's vanity. These defects of vanity, they are constantly seeking admiration. They're constantly needing validation. They're very sensitive to criticism. And whenever somebody gives them feedback, regardless if that feedback is well intended, they see it as a personal attack. And some of them react violently, outwardly, very visible, and others react very violently but internally. And on the outside, they look like they're okay, but on the inside, they are devastated. This is what vanity does. There's also intellectual pride. Intellectual pride is a tricky one. I mean, everybody likes to be considered intelligent, smart. There are many people who always reject books and lessons and education, but then they claim to be very street smart. You see, this is an aspect of intellectual pride. So intellectual pride will always like to appear smart, brilliant. Intellectual pride will always make an effort to win every argument. And when they cannot win every argument by virtue of good reason, they will twist reality to make it work. And they're dismissive of things that are valid and important. They are dismissive of evidence, dismissive of facts, and of course, close-minded. It is their way or the highway. This is what intellectual pride does. And then there is also this thing called mystical pride. Mystical pride is, in our consideration, very dangerous. Because mystical pride suggests that there is a deep understanding of all of those great mysteries of creation, of all of those great mysteries of alchemy, all of that great wisdom that has been passed from lips to ear. They claim to deeply understand it, but in reality, they don't. The mystical pride ego likes to move around, but only move by its fanaticisms. But it likes to be recognized as if it were very stoic. All of its outward expressions are mystical. And they will try to find spirituality and some hidden teaching in everything, even though those things where gnosis is not singing as a song that would sing itself. And they will know everything that there is to know about powers, and they will know everything about chakras, and they will know everything about rituals, and they will know everything about magic, and they will know everything. But they will be very ineffective putting any of that into practice. And more so, they may be effective putting some of those things into practice as a dark art, but when it comes to achieving an internal self-transformation, they cannot do it. This is what mystical pride does. And of course, there are many other phases of pride. There's the pride of self-importance, and the other phase that is the pride of self-sufficiency, the pride of conceitedness, the pride that comes with idolatry, the pride of those who are prepotent, who impose themselves because they are so great and so phenomenal. And you may not believe this, but there are even aspects of pride that thrive in masochism and sadism. They thrive in making other people hurt in whatever ways. Sometimes intellectual, sometimes emotional, many times physical. But one interesting aspect of this pride is that because it does not care about the human vehicle, it would be willing to damage it, and sometimes damage some aspects of it beyond repair. And so, we see aspects of mystical pride that are masochist, and people who will walk down the street self-flagellating, and they will bleed out of their backs, or they will allow others to just push a crown of thorns on their foreheads because that is a reflection of something that they consider mysterious and great, even though it does nothing for inner transformation. These are some of the many, many phases of pride. So if you have some of them, as in the case of many of us, that we have so many of them, actually all of them, and even more, well, now we can see some of those markers and we can identify them for what they are. And that starts opening the door so that we can walk into a space of comprehending these inferior aspects. Let's talk a little bit about lust. Because what is this thing, lust? I mean, some people think that lust is only associated with pornography. Others think that lust is only associated with, for example, fornication. But lust has roots that are way deeper than that. I mean, lust is an intense desire. Actually, lust is a very profound craving, but it is a craving of a sexual nature. And that craving of a sexual nature is directed exclusively for the purposes of pleasure. And it can be directed towards someone in specific, or it can be directed towards anyone or anything. Because the thing about lust is that lust does not know of finances or responsibilities. It does not know of family, does not care about location. All it cares is about satisfying its sexual craving, on bringing the sensations to the max, whether it's the impressions that come through the senses of sight, of hearing, of smell, of taste, and of touch. More so of touch, because the skin is the largest organ in the body. And of course, every square inch, every square centimeter of skin that we have perceives with the sense of touch. And that sense is significantly magnified at the level of the creative organs. So what are some of these many dark phases of lust? The first one is adultery. Adultery is not the same as fornication, even though you can find yourself fornicating while committing adultery. Adultery is deeply associated with the sexual connection. But adultery does not start happening at the moment of that intimate contact. Actually, adultery starts the moment the vows of fidelity are violated. So if you stand before an altar, before a pastor or a reverend or a justice of the law, and you make some vows of love and commitment and respect, etc., to one person, the moment that you break those vows of fidelity, you are already walking down the path of adultery. And what happens when there is intimate connection is that when, for example, the man and the woman come together intimately, like in a marriage, which they have been together for many years, well, there is a transaction of fluids between the couple, and those fluids are of an electromagnetic nature. The man starts magnetizing himself with the forces of the woman, and the woman starts magnetizing herself with the forces of the man. And when that union is harmonious, when it is creative, when it edifies, well, the couple together create a magnetic signature that resonates like the most beautiful symphonies of the universe. But the moment that, for example, the man decides to walk out of the house, violate his vows of fidelity, and then unite himself intimately with, for example, another woman, now he starts becoming magnetized with another woman, with another magnetic imprint. The moment that happens, that magnetic synchronicity that existed between him and his wife is altered. It is tainted. It is damaged. And because women are more intuitive than men, by the way, women are here so that they can be our salvation, because they are more intuitive, the woman will instantaneously start perceiving that there is something wrong, that something is just not right. Something has changed. She may not be able to put her finger into it, but she will intuitively know. And at some point, she will ask the man. And because many of us men are just cowards, we will deny it. We'll say, no, everything is fine. It's all in your head. You know, the many things that are said. And eventually, that cohabitation with that other woman further damages that magnetic imprint, and eventually that magnetic union that existed is broken. So you can see here the effect of adultery. Specifically speaking, in sexual terms, it is a damage to the magnetic signature that is created between a man and a woman when one or the other goes out and starts having intimate relations with somebody else. But there is more in these defects of lust. There is a very interesting aspect of lust that is known as the Don Juan. For the woman, because Don Juan means Mr. John. For the woman, it's called Madame Ines. But they all share the very same trait. Don Juan is a compulsive behavior. It is a compulsion to go and conquer and deceive whoever is going to be the next sexual victim. These Don Juans, this Doña Ines, this Madame Ines of lust, they thrive on defying authority. They thrive on this idea of maybe being caught, and they will take tremendous risks, and they will speak with eloquence and defend with their life the person that they love in the other home, etc., etc. But it is all a fallacy. It is all a lie. This is only a compulsion to conquer, and once the conquest is done, particularly when there is fornication, when that union, sexual union takes place and that is satisfied, then the Don Juan or the Doña Inés, they discard their victim as if they were something, a usable commodity, and they will move on to their next conquest. This is the Don Juan, and it must not be confused with the Casanova. Casanova, if we were to translate that very crudely, that means new house or new home. The Casanova aspect of lust is that person that, in the case of men, well, they think that they are ladies' men. In the case of women, they think that all men just thirst for them, you see, and they are motivated by a love that they have, but it is a love of pleasure. It is not love for the other person. It is love for the experience of those sensations. And they thrive on the thrill of the chase. One thing that is characteristic about the Casanova, whether it is a man or a woman, is that there is always an intellectual connection that is made. They want to appear so interesting, so mysterious, and they seek to attract and have the other person just on their knees, adoring them like they are so wonderful, you see. This is what the Casanova does. And once it conquers the chase, once it does whatever it wanted, it just moves on and discards people, breaking homes, breaking hearts, tremendously affecting its victims. We share these because there are some severe consequences when it comes to these many different phases of lust. On the left-hand side, I want to show you this image of if our mind serves us right, this is Saint Anthony. And Saint Anthony here, we can see him as a saint. We can see the halo of light on his head. But his arms are raised to the heavens. He is pleading. He is begging for some divine intervention. He is asking to be freed from this world of materialism. But what is happening is that this man is being bound onto the earth by all of these women that are symbols of all of the sexual encounters that he found himself experiencing in his life. And each one of those women in that image represents a particular marking in the astral body. Those markings are known as karmasayas. So every time that a man gets in intimate contact with another person, well, that creates a mark in that astral body of that man or of that woman, and that is a karmasaya. As you would imagine, if we're looking for grading purity, if we had the ability to see the divine aspect of all of these astral bodies, and we were to see a degree of purity, you will be looking for an astral body that is free of karmasaya. On the other hand, a body an astral body that is populated by all of these markings, well, you can then see it as a body that has been perhaps abused. This is what is karmasaya. Every time a man comes in contact with a woman, intimate contact, those two, as they exchange those magnetic fluids, what will happen is that, again, the woman will start to magnetize the man and the man to magnetize the woman. And if the woman has had encounters with others, well, then all of those others that connected with her will be linked by karmic connections with this new man. And as a consequence, all of those who were intimate with that single person, well, they all start sharing their karmas. Now you can imagine. Perhaps it is a little easier to see why is it that sometimes things look so complicated, why there is so much suffering. But next to this image, we have this other one where we notice there is a man looking at a book that suggests it's a book on divinity. And as he stands there facing the cross, there is a woman crucified. There is fire in the cross, and we see the Christ falling from the cross. There are even some angels, but those angels have the face of death. Behind the cross, we see the deceiver. And behind that deceiver, we see a symbol of a very brutal psychology. This is the result of Kamaduro. Kamaduro is a sexual energy that has turned to poison. It is a creative power within that, instead of being used for things that can create within us, forces that can be transmuted and help us disintegrate our psychological aggregates, well, it is a sexual force that becomes so corrupted that it becomes poisonous. And we can see here the symbol of that poison as the inner Christ is rejected. As the forces of divinity are no longer appearing as something that carries light. It is a sexual force that is moved by the inner psychological trainer. And of course, it becomes so aggressive, so strong, that it torments people. As that Karmaduro starts manifesting, it leads to the manifestation of a very dark aspect of lust. And this defect of lust is called the vampire eye devil. I, as in, when you say I, as in me. This vampire eye devil is of tremendous demonic power. It always presents as a cunning individual, whether men or women. It has an undying thirst for pleasure, and it drains the life of the living because it abuses of them. And it will abuse of them mentally, emotionally, physically, and it will abuse them sexually as well. It feeds off human energy, particularly through sexual encounters. The vampire eye devil is a horrendous creature, and it leaves larvae everywhere it goes. Those larvae are known as dragons. Those dragons also exist in, for example, houses of prostitution. So this is the vampire eye devil. And there are other aspects of lust, some of them that we make pretend that they are not a big deal. But for example, the lust of the peeping Tom. Very inadequate, very unnecessary. But yet, this is a psychological aggregate of lust that is always looking to satisfy by impressions that come through the eyes. And in terms of that, the peeping Tom seeks to satisfy impression that comes through its own eyes. And then there is the exhibitionist that exposes itself as if others were interested in satisfying stuff like that through their sense of sight. And then there is the aspect of lust that deals with pornography. The thing here is that these egos of lust that crave pornography, they are craving fantasies. And what slowly starts happening is that the physical body starts craving a neurochemical cocktail. That neurochemical cocktail is of hormones and other chemical substances that are produced by the endocrine system. And there is dopamine that is released. Dopamine, as most of you know, is the reward molecule. It releases norepinephrine. As the creature is sitting there watching those sexual images so explicit, well, the arousal that happens while watching releases norepinephrine. And then endorphins. Endorphins that dull pain, that bring some kind of internal euphoria. These psychological aggregates of pornography, they rewire the brain's reward system. And they rewire it in a way that it creates a very twisted, inferior psychology. To the degree that some people will sit and watch pornography not because they are sexually aroused, but they watch pornography because they have been angry. Or they watch pornography because they are depressed. Because they are seeking for these doses of dopamine, for those endorphins, so that they can dull their inner pain, so that they can dull their suffering. And thus, these defects of pornography start abusing the physical body, draining it of its creative energy, just to try to dull their pain. And of course, as they seek to dull their pain, they will start stimulating the sexual creative organs. That has a tremendous consequence. There are some interesting videos on YouTube that speak about the benefits of refraining from masturbation. One of my favorite influencers in YouTube, he is a guy who is very well educated in the matters of physical training and physiology of exercise. And he says, if you are going into the path of masturbation, you are effectively losing your gains. So if you want to become stronger, if you want to allow that body to fully develop, save that creative energy. Of course, he speaks in a different terms. But interesting to know is that at the moment of masturbation, when, for example, the body is experiencing those peristaltic contractions that come with the orgasm, those peristaltic contractions, in the case of the man, will cause the absorption of air from the environment to reach, and those small, very small doses of air are sufficient to blend themselves with those sexual creative waters that, as those waters flow, as part of the flow of those fluids that we have in our cerebrospinal system, well, they start dulling the brain. And they bring in a degree of stupidity. And we say stupidity as in, for example, the inability to grasp some basic understandings. In addition to that, every time that there is an orgasm, the fluids that are expelled from the body, they become focal points for the growth of parasites. And those parasites are of an ethereal nature. And everywhere where those fluids land, those parasites will be born, and they will always invite the repeat of the action that brought them to life so that they can become stronger. So if that is what is happening in a bedroom, in some other place, etc., you can imagine how many of these parasites exist, how they affect the psychology of all those who go to these places where sexuality is being offered in the way that it is. And there is, of course, incubi and succubi. Incubi and succubi, they are these ethereal entities that seek to fornicate with those people who open themselves to these circumstances and situations. So the physical body will be asleep, and the incubus, the succubus, will fornicate with those lunar astral bodies up in the fifth dimension. And because the experience is happening there through the thread of Antakarana, that is what connects the soul to the heart in the physical body, the vibrations are passed just like the string of a violin will vibrate, and the person, while in bed asleep, will suffer from nocturnal pollutions. This is what happens. And with sexuality, there is so much that has to do with violence against nature. Dear friends, if you find yourself in a loving relationship and man, you force yourself to engage in the sexual act when your body is not ready, when the phallus is not ready for the contact, that is a violence against nature. Because the phallus, when it is ready for the intimate contact, it becomes an instrument that allows for the transfer of energies that are psychophysical in nature. Woman, if you force yourself to receive a phallus when your body is not ready to receive the phallus, well, not only it is a violence against nature because you're forcing the gentleness of the organ to absorb the phallus, but also because when the lubrication does not exist, the lubrication is necessary to enable that electric connection with the phallus that is being absorbed. So that is considered a violence against nature. When a man forces himself on a woman, when a woman forces herself on a man, that is violence against nature. When there is a sexual act that is happening in places of the body that were not designed for that purpose, that is considered a violence against nature. And it is considered a violence against nature because as an act of creation, sexuality and the sexual organs are moved by the forces of the Holy Spirit. And it has been written, all sins will be forgiven except the sins against the Holy Spirit. For those, there will be some karmas to pay. But let's move on, because many of the other phases that we carry are also very interesting. For example, the psychological aggregates of jealousy. Jealousy comes over and manifests itself every time that there is a threat or a perceived threat. Jealousy really does not know how to truly operate. Jealousy is rooted in insecurities that are related to pride, in anxieties that are related to many frustrations and fears that are also related to pride. And jealousy comes about every time that there's someone in the immediate environment or within the sphere of the mind that has something that you want. And there are many different types of jealousy. There are religious jealousies, political jealousies, academic jealousies. I mean, there are jealousies in which parents even compare their children. They compare grades and how great the children do. This is all jealousy. And jealousy is always related to some fear of loss. These comparisons, they're always seeing how is it that they're always based on a net zero system in which somebody always has to come short to whatever others are doing. And I tell you again, these jealousies can be romantic, political, intellectual, professional. They can be spiritual, you name it. This is jealousy. And one that we have in common is this thing called anger. Everybody knows anger. The Buddha says anger is a poison that you give to yourself. Some phases of anger, the psychological aggregate of the murderer. I mean, you may say, oof, I've never murdered anyone. That may be true. But how many times have we not been walking around and decided to see some ants and we stomped them and crushed them and destroyed them as if that were inconsequential? How many times have you not found yourself in a situation where you have actually murdered someone in your mind? I mean, you would never do it in the physical, but you would think of it. How many times have you not considered that killing someone would be a solution to problems? You see, this is the psychological aggregate of the murderer. And there's also the cruel and violent. These aspects of us that are related to anger, that thrive in seeing people beating themselves each other to a pulp, in seeing blood and bones broken, and you may say, whoa, wait, I'm not interested in that. I don't subscribe to those fights. I don't like boxing, and that is true. But how many times have you not been sitting down watching a movie and being in complete affinity with the hero and enjoying when the hero is making the bad guys pay? because of his phenomenal karate moves, or because breaking bones, or because shoot, you see, this is cruel and violent. This is cruelty and violence, and this is part of our anger. There's the aspect of anger that is vengeful, that would like to see others pay. There's the anger that is constantly cursing, that is an abnormal behavior so normalized, where cursing becomes part of the colorful conversations that many have. This is the incorrect use of the creative word. But of course, there's also the intolerant, the aspect of anger that is just done with everything that is happening. I mean, like, there's also the screamer. There is also the aspect of anger that is impatient. And just like that, there are so many other different faces of anger. But now you can see them better. Now you can identify them. And what can we say about greed? Greed is such an interesting one, because greed is an insatiable desire to have more than what you need. I mean, we have some basic needs. Our needs are food, shelter, clothing. Everything beyond that is teetering into the space of greed. And the thing with greed is that it is a craving that is never satisfied. Greed always focuses on material possessions. It will always seek to hoard or to spendthrift. And it is always exercised at the expense of others. Take away from many and give it to only one. Hoard it and don't let others have it. Or spend all of it uncontrollably and destabilize the system so that others don't have an opportunity to benefit from it. This is what greed does. And then there's psychological aggregate of envy. Envy is so dangerous. It is always looking at making comparisons. It always carries resentment. Envy is always discontent, and it is fueled by a desire to have that of others or to keep others from having. The emphasis of envy is on what they don't have. Envy is always looking at seeing others not enjoying what is rightfully theirs. This is what envy does. There's gluttony. And gluttony is an excessive indulgence, whether it is food or drink. But the indulgence moves the psyche into a space where it starts creating harm because there is no moderation. Gluttony has no sense of satisfaction. Gluttony focuses on immediate gratification and seeks to make that immediate gratification constant. So it stuffs itself now, and in a little while it goes and does it again, and it does it again, and it does it again. And this is what it does. This is why it is so harmful. And what about laziness? I'm going to show you different phases of laziness, because laziness is not just us throwing ourselves in the sofa, not doing our things. You see, laziness is associated with lack of interest. This laziness, it brings about a sense of feeling overwhelmed, and then you stop. Then there's nothing happening. It seeks to be unproductive, and more so, laziness. It's not interested at all in any type of responsibility. For example, mental laziness. I mean, mental laziness is, I don't want to learn this. This is stupid. Why do I need this? As we have seen many times, today is the day 15,048 that I have not used the quadratic equation. No, it is important that we learn new things, that we expose ourselves so that we can expand that cultural foundation, so that we can learn how to think by inquiring, analyzing, contemplating, reflecting. You see? Mental laziness is an aspect of laziness, but also negligence is an aspect of laziness too. Yes, we can find negligence in anger, and we can find negligence in gluttony, because these defects, they are just like that. A web of very complex chaotic manifestations. But the negligent is the one who seeks to do something regardless of the outcome. They just want to get it done. It doesn't matter if it's good or bad. Just do it. Just get it over with. And those are the active aspects of laziness. There is an aspect of laziness that is the procrastinator, leaving things for later, adding into the anxiety, the frustration, the stress that connects then to anger, that leads them to many other defects. So we share this with you. I'm going to tell you now, what can we do about these? Now that you know all these defects, and there's so many others, what can we do about these? Friends, if you want to eliminate these defects, the first thing is to put no objections. Let there be no judgments. Look at these defects within you and accept them. See them for what they are. And because you observe them with the eye of your mind, you don't have to share anything that you learn about your defects with anyone. That is why this work is occult. It's because it's private. It is esoteric. And with no objections, no judgments, as you accept these defects, give yourself an opportunity at the end of each day and revisit your day. Go ahead and do an exercise of retrospection. As you sit down and you relax your body and you close your eyes, start from that moment and from there backwards into your day. And allow yourself to see the manifestations of these defects throughout the day. You can always invoke of a power superior to the mind, like your being, your divine being, and ask your being to show you the most relevant events of the day. Those circumstances, those conditions in which you reacted in one way or another, of which you could work to eliminate those defects. And if you do that, if you choose to ask for that help, I invite you to embrace the principle of spontaneity. That means that spontaneously your divine being will show you at the eye of your mind a particular event, a particular scene of your day. When you see it, don't reject it. Don't say, no, it can't be it. Don't say, no, I don't want to see that. Don't say, oh, that's mid. Don't say, oh, it's cringe. No. See it and perceive it. And as you do that, walk into the exercise embracing the principle of ahimsa. Ahimsa means no harm. No harm to you. No harm to others. No harm to the environment. No harm to your community. No harm to your family. No harm to your state. No harm to the world. No harm to the universe. That is your principle. As you're observing yourself in those key moments of the day, remember, no judgments, no objections. Observe them like the movie director that is contemplating the movie itself, not like that one who is contemplating the movie as an actor trapped within the drama. And make an effort to see, how did that defect affect your thoughts? How your thoughts got violent? How your thoughts became irreverent? How your thoughts became so negative and inferior? As you see how it affected your thoughts, also seek to understand how it affected your sentiments. How your emotions went from whatever they were to those inferior emotions of the moment. Emotions that could have been internally violent or outwardly violent. Emotions that could have been dismissive of an insult to others. And as you see your thoughts and you see your sentiments, try also to see how that defect affected your actions. I mean, were you calm and suddenly your fists were clenched and your fingers were turning white because of how hard you were clenching your fists? Were you punching a wall? Were you throwing things? Did you throw yourself in a corner? Did you cover yourself in blankets and turn off the light? See all that. Ask your divine being to help you understand how it affected your thoughts, your sentiments, and your actions. And at the time to eliminate that defect, invoke of your divine mother, that fire of Kundalini that is so powerful, that serpent of fire that exists within each and every one of us. And ask your divine mother with infinite love, Divine Mother, please, I beg of you with my heart, with my soul, that you help me destroy this psychological aggregate. Destroy all of its consequences. Destroy all of its manifestations in the many different levels of the mind. Please help reduce this defect to a cosmic dust. And I tell you that your Divine Mother will help you, and she will do it. Your mind will be tempted, and it will try to hide the defect, rename it, push it deeper into your subconsciousness, but that doesn't help. There may come a time in which you may think, oh, I must have already eliminated all my anger. It's been like 3 weeks. I haven't been angry once. We will tell you this right now. The moment you say that, you have just ignited a fire, and that anger will come back with a revenge. And you will see yourself reacting in ways that are completely exaggerated, not proportional to any offense that you may receive. So this elimination work is methodical. No defect is eliminated overnight. I mean, after all, you have been cultivating them for the last 20, 30, 50 years. But seek to understand how they affect your thoughts, how they affect your sentiments, how they affect your actions, and invoke of the divine power of your Divine Mother, Kundalini, and ask her to eliminate the defect for you. Friends, we wanted to share this with you because you can find the core of all of this beautiful teaching in the books of The Revolution of the Dialectic, The Revolutionary Psychology, and The Great Rebellion. These are books that have been written by Samael Aun. And this is what we wanted to share with you today. Dear friends, this has been Exposing Your Inner Imposter. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this evening. May all beings be happy.